Good morning.
I wanted to sit down here with you guys this morning. This just feels like a snuggle talk. A snuggle talk. It's cold out there. I have really noticed that, and I appreciate the prayers this morning around that for those who are out in the cold. We are just a few weeks, just a couple of weeks into winter officially. Winter joins us officially right around the 21st, 22nd of December. And that's the winter solstice, and that marks the dark time of the year. It marks the winter, the beginning of winter, which is officially with us until about March. But the darkness of the year actually begins coming upon us a little earlier. It begins towards the end of the previous, but towards the fall. Actually, right around November 1st is when we start to notice that the days are shorter and the nights are longer. The nights grow longer right up until December 21st, the longest night of the year. And then they begin ever so slightly to get shorter and shorter, and the days grow in length again. But we don't really notice that until around February 1st. So I think of the dark of the year as being from around November 1st to around February 1st. That's the time of the year when the night seems longer, it grows longer. We don't notice the sun returning until that time in February. Now during the sun part of the year, during the solar part of the year, we are busy. We typically have growing season. Our gardens are busy. Our lives are busy. We are running around. We're producing. We're growing our projects. There's lots of swim meets. There's soccer practice. There's baseball. There's all kinds of warm weather activity. But one of the things that happens towards the end of the year, we tend to keep that energy going right on up to Christmas. We're rushing into that Christmas holiday as well. We're rushing towards the parties. We're working on our activities. We're trying so hard to get to the return of the light that sometimes we don't take time to honor the stillness of the darkness. And now we find ourselves all the Christmas parties are over, and that's great. We had a great Christmas. We've had wonderful time with family and friends. But oftentimes we feel a little exhausted after that, don't we? In fact, many times I hear talk, and we as groups talk about how exhausting that holiday season can be. The time of the winter, the time of the dark of the year, is really a gift for regenerating and restoring. And now that Christmas is past, we can kind of spend a few weeks in that place. And when we do it consciously, we have an opportunity to really grow and benefit from that darkness and from that restorative time. I loved, who was it that said sleep up here from the kids? I love that because she actually spoke we all feel like we need a little more sleep. And that's a very natural thing to come about, especially during the winter time. I'm going to watch the clock, you guys. I'm just telling you. I'm going to watch the clock because I know we got some important stuff going on. We're redecorating the church, but there's football. Okay, I know. I was going to wear my Broncos jersey today, but I thought it might really mortify Penelope if I did that. So I figured just know that my heart is wearing a Broncos jersey right now. All right, so just like our bodies get regenerated from the darkness, the cycles that we live in, the darkness of the night, every day we need some sleep, we need the rest. Also, our psyches, our mental processes, our spirit and our soul needs the blessings and the gifts of the dark of the year. We are surrounded by cycles all around us. The rhythm, the ebb and flow of the tides, the rhythm of our heart, the day and the night, the spring and the fall, the winter and the summer. All of these cycles help bless us when we walk through them consciously and when we bring what we can into the experience with them. So what I want to explore a little bit today is we're going to look at some different ways of honoring this dark time of the year and bringing some of the gifts into that space. You know, many, many years ago, long ago, before heated cars and before street lights and before central heat and air in all of our buildings, the cold and the dark of the winter forced people inside more. You didn't travel quite as much. You didn't spend as many hours out in the field. You came into the home. You came in around the hearth, around the fireplace. You spent time together as a family or in groups of friends around someone's hearth. A lot of benefits came from this activity. You got to know one another a little better. You got to know yourself a little better, because after you've talked your head off for a while, eventually there's nothing more to say. Now, this is a time I'm talking about that's before we had personal data screens that were in front of our faces all the time in the form of a phone or a tablet or what have you. It's before television. It's before any of that type of thing. People had to talk to each other. And then eventually, there was nothing more to say. And so people spent time in the stillness. Imagine yourself sitting around the fireplace with your family. There are no electronics on, and you're listening. You're listening to the wind. You're listening, really listening to each other, not thinking about the next thing you're going to say or the next thing to even do, because there's nothing to do right now. It's too cold. It's too dark. So you're sitting and you're listening to one another. There's a part of us, I believe, in our hearts that really longs for that. There's a part of us that knows the benefit of that quiet time of being together, that quiet time of listening to your children, really listening. Not listening for what you want them to say, but listening to who they are. And then those children learn from you how to listen. They listen to who you are, who you really are, not who you're trying to pretend you are, or who you're, wanting to be. In that space of listening, great things happen. Now, we cycle through this every day. We have these cycles every day, in day and night, and we're blessed with the lengthening of the night in the winter. And we also see that cycle in the phases of the year as well. One of the gifts, there are actually gifts now that they're finding out through science, gifts of the night that we have lost, and that we disrupt with some of the light that we experience. I'm going to share with you just a really brief description of this from the same author that Joan read from us in her book, Learning to Walk in the Dark, which I highly recommend. Where's my quote? I had an interesting thing happen last night where my computer just really completely shut down. And you know how you always think I've saved well. Save early, save often, they tell you. And my quote is gone. But I have all components of... Okay, that's fine. So anyway, I'm going to try and do the best I can without actually reading this quote to you. So she tells us in her studies she found that every time we have the flickering of the lights, every time we turn the light on to go to the bathroom, once the night falls upon us and we're on our way to bed, we're on our way to deep sleep, every time the cell phone lights up or what have you, it affects the chemistry in your brain. It actually shifts and changes the chemistry in your brain. It begins to trigger your adrenal glands. It triggers the pituitary glands. It triggers your growth hormones. And it shuts down the production of melatonin. So we have a difficulty staying asleep. Anybody ever have that problem? Yeah, everybody's nodding their head. We have difficulty staying asleep. And our body leaves the restorative, regenerative phase. And it begins the up and about and running around phase. And so we lose the benefit of the sleep, and then our body has to go through the whole shutdown thing again. So on the one hand, okay, so let's make an effort to sleep in the dark. And I know I'm not telling you guys anything you haven't heard before, because we hear about this in the news and such as that. But I want to really invite us to look at being able to make the shifts and the changes that actually affect our lives, rather than just wishing that, oh, I wish I could be in more darkness. But bring it into your room. Go through your room and shut off some of the light activating mechanisms and things like that. And get that deep sleep that we need, because it's the restorative and regenerative factor that I'm looking at here. We are oftentimes more tired than we need to be. We let ourselves get exhausted, and then we say we wish we felt better. We say we wish we felt better. And I want to invite you to practice some techniques that will actually help you feel better. So that's one of them on the daily, day-to-day schedule, is to shift to the way you sleep and bring that darkness into your room of sleeping. Looking at it from the perspective of the dark of the year, and of really inviting some benefit from this dark time and the lengthened nights. There's a few practices that I want to offer that are possibilities and that are things that you can do pretty easily in your everyday life. So one of them, we're going to look at things you can do for yourself and things you can do for your relationships. So personal self-reflection and building of relationships. In the self-reflection area, I want to invite you to set aside some time during this dark of the year, during this period of time where the nights are longer and the days are shorter. Instead of trying to figure out how you can have more light to do more stuff during the darkness, go ahead and allow the darkness into your life. Go ahead and turn the lights down a little earlier at night. Cut your projects a little shorter. It's not the growing season. Really, when I come back and speak in the spring, we'll talk about pumping up those projects. But for the winter, I want to invite you to cut back on the projects a little bit. Give yourself some quiet time. Turn off the TV a little early and just sit in the silence for a little while. Or, when we'll get to this in a moment, but just sit in conversation with the people around you. But for self-reflection, go off to your closet and pray, or whatever your version of that is. Spend some more time in your meditation. Sit with a couple of different ideas. I love questions. I find questions to be incredibly powerful tools for personal growth and for awareness. Questions bring a heightened awareness and a growth in your consciousness. If you can sit with a question and not rush to answer it yourself, just be in the question, you can get great depths of information from this. So, one of the questions that is great to work with this time of year is the simple question of, what do I believe? What do I believe? And just sit with that question for a little while and see what comes up. Some of what you might notice is the parade of things you're supposed to believe for whatever reason. Perhaps it's from one of the most recent books that you've read, or one of the most recent workshops you've taken. And I love books and workshops, trust me, I do. And we have to know what we believe, or we at least need to explore. You may not ever get to an answer of knowing what you believe, but you want to explore what is it that you believe and begin to see how it shapes who you are. How does it shape how you function in life and how you interact with people? From that place, you can then move on to a space of exploring whether or not it serves you. But if we rush to that place without really being with the question for a little while, I think we do ourselves a disservice. So, sitting with the question of what I believe, what do I believe? And then eventually you can add an ending to the statement, what do I believe about God? Or what do I believe about nutrition? What do I believe about what's good for me? But just sitting with those questions, what do I believe, ... and just see and observe what floats up to the top for you. You might want to journal some of the things, but don't force yourself to write. First of all, don't force yourself to write in complete grammatical perfection. Just jot down some of the things that bubble up. So, sitting with what I believe, what do I believe, and sitting with that question. Another exercise for self-reflection is the exercise of writing your own eulogy. Has anybody ever done this? Have you ever done this before? It can seem like a pretty horrifying experience, and initially it's like, why would I ever want to do that? But if you take off the layers and you look at it a little deeper, look at it and be with the question again of what do I want people to say about me at my own funeral or my own memorial service? How do I want to be remembered? Now, the ego is going to make you want to go right to the place of condemnation because, of course, you're not living up to any of that in some way, shape, or form. But in truth, you really are. You are becoming the person that you will be eventually when they remember you. Okay? So it's all a process. It's all a process. And if you look at how you want to be remembered, what you want people to say about you at your funeral or memorial service, you think about it, then you can be with the next step in the process, which is bringing more of that into your life today. If I want people to talk about me and say how kind I was, then I want to practice kindness on a day-to-day basis. Most of the time when we look at our lives this way, we will find that we don't necessarily expect people to stand up there or want people to stand up there and talk about how good she was at manifesting a new car whenever she needed it. That's a great thing to be able to do, but do you picture yourself being remembered that way at your funeral? It's a great technique to get those parking spaces anytime, and actually, that may be something they say in humor. Boy, she could get a parking space in a heartbeat. But you really want to be remembered for, there's something in your heart that wants to be remembered, that you want to be remembered for. Find out what it is. Don't let me tell you what it needs to be. It's not about what I'm telling you to do. It's about your heart speaking. And that's what one of the great parts of the dark of the year is about taking time, cutting back, so that you have time to sit and listen to what your heart has to say. What really nourishes me is another good question to sit with and ask yourself during this time of year. What is it that nourishes my soul? What is it that my body needs? And not worry about whether or not you're doing it. Don't worry about that. That's not the point. The point is being aware of it, and then it begins to seep into your daily life from that place of awareness, not from trying to control it, but from being aware of it. Do you feel the difference in the energy of trying to control? A lot of what we try to do when we're working so hard at getting better at stuff is a control mechanism. We're trying to control how things show up rather than letting it just be. And so when we can sit with a question and let it bubble up from within us, what is it that I believe? What is it that nourishes me? How do I want to be remembered? Then it begins to permeate our lives in a natural way. Growing up from the earth, from that belly of the mother in the spring, when the days start to get longer, then we start to see the fruits of this kind of work because we've let it lay quiet in the winter. Do you guys follow me around that? That letting it lay quiet and just being with the question in the winter, in the dark of the year, then sets the stage for the growing season to take place. So the other side of this, from moving from self-reflection to relationship reflection, you can take all of these same techniques and work them in your relationships. If you have children, teenagers or young children at home, take these exercises and pick 1 or 2 nights a week where you're not running around like crazy people. You cut the schedule back a little bit, and maybe you all sit and cook together at home. Everybody chops some of the vegetables, and you begin to talk and just have natural conversation. It doesn't really work. I used to try this with my kids. It doesn't really work if you have a checklist and you're working to check, okay, we've talked about that, and we've talked about that. It has to bubble up in a natural sort of way. So you're creating an environment that allows it to bubble up in a natural sort of way. So you're cooking together, or you're taking care of some aspect of the home together. You're sitting in front of the fireplace together without a specific agenda, and you ask the children or your friends. If you don't have young children at home or you live alone, you've got your friends over and you're just having a conversation, and maybe one of these questions comes up and you ask those children or those friends, what do you believe? And then you really listen. Now, as a parent, the challenge is not trying to overlay what you think they should believe on top of it. Let me tell you, they can read your face, okay? So if you're thinking, if you're afraid of what they're about to say or what they've just said, they're going to read your face. So chill is the word. Chill is the word here. So you're relaxed and you're listening. It doesn't matter. In fact, it doesn't matter what they say. The listening is what really matters. Hearing them is what really matters. Allowing them the space to be heard. Let me tell you, some of the stuff, the camera. Some of the stuff my children said to me were things that I didn't necessarily want to hear. Hi, Rachel. Hi, Leanne. But I tried to create an environment where they felt they could say it to me. And that's the goal here. That's what you're trying to do, is make that connection with your relationships, with your spouse, with your friends, with your parents, let me tell you, listening to your aged parents is a big deal. Give them the time. Invite them over for tea with no agenda. No, we're not going to talk about your will. I just want to know what you believe. Just giving that space for getting to know each other. And it gives them a chance to get to know you. So creating this space and this time, allowing that quiet time of the dark, and noticing that it comes around every year. So even though we're well into it this year, and you may not have any great ideas as to how this may happen, the great thing about a cycle is that come next fall, come October 2015, you can begin to think about the fact that just like death and taxes, the winter is coming. The dark of the year is coming. Only it's not so bad as death and taxes. It's a great, rich opportunity for these types of things that we've been talking about. So you begin to plan your winter, and instead of running from party to party with high energy, every now and then you intersperse some quiet time, some quiet around the fire time with some creative conversation or some creative activities. And that becomes a tradition of the winter and of the darkness. Many of us did white stone ceremony a week ago, and before that we did the burning bowl. And in reality, in actuality, these types of services, these types of rituals have been done in various forms for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And they've been done during the dark of the year. And you plan and you prepare and you move up to this time. So you begin to think about what it is you want to release in that fire, whether it's the fire of the Yule log or the fire of the burning bowl. You plan and you prepare. And then the white stone ceremony is a time of setting of intention. And various forms of rituals have been set around that. And it's done during that dark of the year, pulling on those energies and tapping into those energies of the quiet and the regeneration and the restoration of the darkness. And so every year our earth goes through these cycles that lend to that richer and fuller growing season in the spring. And when we can tap into that space and fertilize our lives with that, with a clarity and a conscious understanding of that time and that focus, then we bring a much richer, much greater harvest later on in the year. So I want to take us into that meditation space with this understanding of the stillness and with this understanding of the dark of the year. The darkness doesn't have to be something to be afraid of. It can be tapped into and benefited from. It can bring a blessing into our lives. And so I invite you to begin to move into that space of quiet stillness and just being aware of your breath as it enters and exits your body. Breathing into that space.
In the stillness of this moment, there is peace. There is peace. In the stillness of this moment, there is peace. There is peace. And I rest and trust and breathe and know that in the stillness of this moment there is peace.
And so we breathe into that stillness of this moment, the only moment there ever is. The restorative, regenerative powers of this moment are always available to us. And when we bring this awareness, the awareness of the seasons and the rhythms that surround us, when we bring awareness of those rhythms into this moment, we open up greater depth. So we breathe, we relax, and we just sit with the question, what nourishes me this morning? Just let that question flow through you. In this moment, what nourishes me? We don't try to answer it. We just watch what comes with the question. We release any judgment, criticism, any self-criticism around whatever we're not doing that we think we ought to be doing. We let it go and just come back to the question of what nourishes me. We let our roots be fed. We take this question with us into the rest of this day, noticing the gray and blessing it, noticing the night and blessing it, knowing that it will pass, and with it comes great blessing, great richness. The dark of the winter brings great richness. And we give thanks for that. We let this stillness feed us throughout this season, throughout this day, and in this ever-present moment.